Story 1. The judge I know flat out refuses to express political opinions during his time on the bench because he believes he should be as neutral as possible. He has said he looks forward to retiring so he can express opinions and have conversations about politics again. As far as I know, this is a self-imposed restriction. I do not think our bar or laws require this. Story 2. I am a lawyer. I just attended continuing legal education with a federal judge who stated clearly that we are currently in a constitutional crisis, possibly the worst in the history of the United States. Story 3. I recently had jury duty. One of the questions on the form was, "Can you uphold your duty as a jury member to the court?" I replied that the Supreme Court is openly taking bribes, and I no longer believe any of you are following the rule of law. Needless to say, I was not selected for jury duty. Story 4. You can visit the law forum, but basically they are issuing bad rulings in a few different ways. First, they are using the shadow docket to place or remove injunctions without written decisions, allowing them to rule in favor of the former administration without explanation. This means these rulings are not considered precedent and could not work in favor of a future administration. Second, they are not recusing themselves in cases with conflicts of interest. They are hearing cases funded by people who take them on vacations, make donations to judges or their spouses' causes, hire justices' spouses, and give cash gifts. This violates federal ethics rules for federal judges. Third, they abuse a judicial philosophy that lets them misinterpret laws in ways that benefit their benefactors. They might cherry-pick an old dictionary or obscure historical document as evidence of what the lawmakers intended, often ignoring the plain language of the law and contemporary writing. Finally, they issue narrow rulings to give the former administration what it wants. For example, this administration is ignoring the United States Constitution, federal law, and established case law. It is not just minor issues but blatant disregard for the law. The Supreme Court recently ruled that judges overseeing lawsuits cannot issue injunctions preventing this administration from unlawful actions nationwide. The case concerned stripping citizenship from people born in the United States when the Constitution clearly and unequivocally guarantees citizenship. The court did not address this, effectively allowing continued violations and leaving Congress as the only check through impeachment. Overall, these illogical rulings complicate matters in lower courts, creating gridlock as the court system tries to address the consequences. This appears to serve the purpose of allowing the administration to evade accountability. Story 5. Without providing enough information to identify him, my grandfather stepped down as a city judge within the last few years. He was nominated for a state Supreme Court judge position before but withdrew because he felt the experience required too much compromise. The only opinion I have heard from him on the recent Supreme Court of the United States is that, morally speaking, a minimum of 6 of the justices should be impeached immediately, if not sooner. He has said privately that they serve lifetime appointments and, speaking purely as a private citizen and not as legal counsel, the shorter those lifetime appointments are, the more hope America has to recover. If their lifetime appointments are not significantly shortened, then everything he has done to maintain the rule of law will have meant nothing. I do not think I have ever seen him look so defeated before. Story 6. From what I hear, judges believe the court needs more transparency and better rules to maintain its reputation. Story 7. So, does anybody here have an answer to the original poster's actual question? There is plenty of good discussion here, but it is mostly tangential. I think it is a good question. I would be quite interested in hearing honest reactions from the rank-and-file judges at everyone's local district court. Story 8. A lot of people talk about not trusting the system. You're right, but making statements on jury forms that you know will get you released is not the answer. You are exactly the person who most needs to serve. You are the ones who can make a difference in the jury room. They will have you sign things that make it sound like you don't have a choice. They will say you must be compelled to observe the law as it's written in your service. Now, in that box, it's your judgment that matters, and all the corruption goes by the boards. There is nothing they can do but accept it. In the jury box, we are the law. Nullify what isn't right. Serve actual justice. There is no recourse. Story 9. My uncle is a judge, and my father and other uncle are both lawyers. Lawyer Uncle worked for the government in Washington, D.C. for 3 decades. Judge Uncle has always been incredibly scrupulous about never discussing political opinions ever since he was appointed. However, he looks really stressed, especially because the previous administration has targeted him personally. He bought a security camera system for his house due to concerns that dangerous individuals might show up. It is a really scary time to be a judge just trying to do your job because you can get targeted for the most harmless rulings, let alone expressing personal opinions. Meanwhile, Lawyer Uncle and my dad, who follow Supreme Court rulings closely, think the Supreme Court is going down like the Titanic. I have never seen them this nihilistic. They have dedicated their lives to the idea that the law, used correctly, is a tool that can help people. I really feel for them. Story 10. My parents' friend, who is a retired judge, told us to sit low, keep our heads down, not attend any protests, avoid making any posts anywhere, and just survive for the next 4 years. She said it does not seem as bad as it really is. It is much worse than it seems, and it is only going to get worse. Story 11. Just finished dinner with an Article 3 judge. The pendulum always swings. These issues only come to the courts because Congress will not do its job. Story 12. Both my in-laws are retired judges. One was a criminal judge, the other a settlement judge. They both disagree with what the Supreme Court is doing, but it is less from a legal perspective than you might think. Maybe it is because constitutional law was not their specialty, but I believe it is more due to the fact that the Supreme Court's actions are fairly transparent. You do not need a deep understanding of the law or vast experience to see what is happening. Their assessments are similar to those of the general public. To sum it up, it would be, what the heck? Story 13. My grandmother-in-law, an appellate judge, and my grandfather-in-law, an attorney, are both shocked and livid. Story 14. I have lawyers and judges in my family, and they all express fear for the direction of this country because they know what is happening is blatant corruption and political pandering to the political right. Story 15. I know an academic expert on the Supreme Court, and this is what he said. A dear friend asked me today to comment on the final day of the 2024 Supreme Court of the United States term. They asked me for something hopeful, which I am not sure I can give, especially when it comes to executive power. Here, in a nutshell, is what we know. Trump versus California for accessible safe abortion, birthright citizenship. The case was not about the 14th Amendment. Rather, it was focused on whether federal district trial court judges can issue nationwide injunctions to stop unconstitutional executive orders or legislation. This, combined with the Trump immunity case from last term, essentially gives the president unfettered power, and now the key check on that power, which he intends to use, is gone. Of course, the Supreme Court of the United States can still rule on the constitutionality of executive orders and laws, but that often takes years if the justices do not want to, as they seem to suggest they would not expedite review. Trump is becoming more of a dictator every day with a Supreme Court of the United States that is intent on helping him. More specifically, the key bright side to the opinion is that the majority does not really ban nationwide injunctions in all cases. Rather, it holds that injunctive relief that directly benefits non-plaintiffs in a specific case is appropriate only when doing so is necessary to ensure the plaintiffs themselves get complete relief. In short, if an injunction limited to the plaintiffs in that case gives them all the relief to which they are entitled, nothing broader is permitted. That is the holding. The remaining cases today are also major rulings but do not go so far as California for accessible safe abortion in terms of its policy implications and what they mean for the future of the United States. Read Justice Sotomayor's dissent. It is damning and well written. Story 16. Every judge I've talked to just sighs, shakes their head, and changes the subject. That silence says more than any strong opinion ever could. Story 17. I personally know a federal judge and a couple of former bar presidents, as well as many lawyers. The truth is they are still hoping the law will resolve this entire mess. They have faith in the rule of law, that no one is above the law, and sincerely believe justice will prevail eventually. It is the only way they can prevent themselves from having an existential crisis. Story 18. I think everyone is being let down by those in the legal profession who have chosen to do nothing. They are the best equipped to fight against the erosion of laws and to stand up to the Supreme Court with the law itself. Deeply disappointing. Story 19. The court has been illegitimate for years. The Federalist Society, along with Republicans, systematically packed the court with ideological right-wing radicals, most recently starting with Bush Jr., including Roberts and Alito. They pretended to care about precedent and the law. Following the Trump years, the appointees became even more extreme, and their masks are off. This has made Roberts appear more moderate. The court rules on cases with exclusive right-wing political bias. They should have been impeached and removed by Democrats, but congressional Democrats failed to act. Now we have an illegitimate court, which is highly problematic because it undermines the rule of law and public trust in the judicial system, an institution whose power depends on that trust. I argue that this constitutional order is broken and not fixable due to the deep destruction of institutions like the court and corporate billionaire influence. Instead, a third republic needs to be formed with a new, modern constitution. Otherwise, we will continue slipping further toward corporate fascism. Story 20. The people who express their views are all very conservative, while the liberal judges I know and have spoken to only discuss it in private with family and friends. There are a few conservative judges I am aware of who voted for the Democratic Party in this election, but they also keep that confidential. Story 21. The one I know, a circuit court judge, is not corrupt, but he is certainly biased by his personal beliefs regardless of the law. I have gone no contact because he is an incredible and tone-deaf hypocrite. I am sure he would relish being in the position that Supreme Court justices hold. He would willingly be corrupted for that kind of money. Story 22. I know one, and I will not even ask because I know there is a 0% chance he comments on politics while in office. Another friend, who ran for a local judgeship but did not win. His father was a judge and he clerked for a judge, is fairly candid but measured. He is a center-to-center-left kind of person, so he is only really appalled by the extreme right and extreme left. I enjoy talking to him because he focuses a lot on the legality and theory behind issues covered in the news in a political way. The summary of my many conversations with him is that the law leaves a surprising amount of flexibility for motivated actors to accomplish whatever they want regardless of the spirit of the law. To not take advantage of that fact makes you naive when every other person in the legal system is doing it in pursuit of their own agenda. The law is merely a game you play. The better player you are, the more you get your way. As far as the Supreme Court is concerned, everyone pays lip service to the idea that the court is politically neutral, while secretly and silently acknowledging it is and always has been, to some degree, politically motivated. You can debate to what degree or if there are pockets of true neutrality, but that is the exception. Story 23. Judges, especially lower court federal judges or appellate judges, tend to have opinions, and not just the kind they write in opinions. Privately, many express frustration over the politicization of the court. They see it as less of a bastion of impartial justice and more of a battleground where ideology trumps law. Some admire its intellectual rigor, acknowledging that cases before the court often hinge on razor-thin interpretations of precedent. Story 24. Judges I know are anxious. Associations are promoting mental health advocacy strongly. There is significant dissolution even at the state level. Story 25. A judge I know stays neutral on politics while serving to keep things fair. He misses discussing it but waits until retirement. It is his personal choice, not a legal rule. Staying unbiased helps maintain trust in the system. Story 26. Judges often say the Supreme Court is increasingly political, affecting public trust. However, some respect its legal rigor despite controversial decisions. Story 27. This is what my relative, who is a lawyer, stated about the Supreme Court decisions. The national injunction issue seems like a reasonable response to the increased use of local judges overusing national policy, but there are problems with that too. The Supreme Court sometimes has to choose between two flawed outcomes, and for national injunctions, I think they went with the least flawed of the two options. As far as transgender books for pre-kindergarten, it seems unreasonable to me. I don't see any value in a 3 to 5-year-old learning about gender identity. I think the left has pushed too far and too hard with some of this, and we are seeing the natural pushback. Story 28. Check out Advisory Opinions podcast for expert, unbiased analysis of the court's opinions. The United States Supreme Court is doing just fine. What everyone here does not appreciate is that the far right is just as livid with the court. Story 29. I don't know any judges personally, but I imagine some are probably side-eyeing the court like, "Are you all good up there?" Story 30. I said I have an inherent bias against police officers when they called me back to do jury duty after I was removed from a case. I have not received a letter since, and that was over 10 years ago. Story 31. I know several federal judges. This is much worse than we even imagined, is what I am hearing privately. Story 32. The only judges I have met are or were on the Supreme Court of the United States or the Federal Circuit. We know how Justice Thomas would answer. I only said hello to Justice Alito because his son was in law school with my wife. Justice Scalia is deceased, but he taught a summer session my wife attended, so I got to meet him a couple of times. Another judge is currently on the Fifth Circuit. He is cool and stayed at my house. He can only shake his head at the current state of everything. I do not agree with any of them politically. Story 33. I was on jury duty, and one of the other jury members got drunk during the break and came back intoxicated. Another lady said she was on the radio and could not be impartial. I caught a look from one of the parties, and I truly felt like he was guilty. I did not want to say that out loud because I did not want to influence anyone's opinion, so I fumbled my words and said something about knowing if there is cheese on a burger. They did not select me. Story 34. The only judge I have ever met was in 1998. He would rent a van and fill it with kegs of beer for the University of Virginia. He was probably in his 70s. A rapper. Story 35. They are not. Honestly, I was shocked at how objective the judges and magistrates I have worked with are. I attended a seminar where the judge and magistrates presented cases that they see as critical to consider because they may change precedent for future cases, but that is about as much opinion as I could see. Story 36. The closest I heard about politics was, as often as a higher court overturns me, I, a district court judge, overturn them way more often. Story 37. Check out a podcast called Strict Scrutiny. It is a great ongoing discussion on Supreme Court of the United States rulings, culture, and more. Story 38. All the judges I know have expressed shock at how illiterate Ketanji Jackson Brown appears. Phrases like dry technical argument and legalese indicate both a poor understanding of basic law and an unacceptably low intellect for a Supreme Court judge. Story 39. Many in the legal field are Republican and voted for this as the silent majority over the last 30 years. Unfortunately, we will bear the consequences. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.